Scene 1. The arrivals. The silence in the car was thick enough to cut. Claire watched the grey Ohio landscape slide past her window. Bare trees like skeletal hands reaching toward a low December sky, frost clinging to dead grass in the fields. David's hands rested easy on the steering wheel, his face carrying that hopeful expression she'd learned to dread over the past 3 days. "We're making good time," he said, glancing at the dashboard clock. "Should be there by 2. Claire said nothing. The urn sat between them in a shopping bag from Kroger because they hadn't thought to buy something nicer. Her mother, reduced to ashes in a plastic container, riding shotgun in a paper sack. The indignity of it twisted something in Claire's chest, though she couldn't say if it was grief or the familiar burn of resentment. "I really think this will be good," David continued, filling the silence the way he always did. "Getting away from the city, spending time together. When's the last time you and Jenny actually talked?" 8 years, Claire thought. 8 years since I watched Mom sign that will. "A while," she said. David reached over and squeezed her hand. She let him, though it took effort not to pull away. He meant well. He always meant well. That was part of the problem. David couldn't understand that some silences were better left unbroken, some distances better left uncrossed. The sign for Maple Grove Road appeared on their right, weathered wood with hand-painted letters. David turned onto the narrow 2-lane road. The pavement was cracked and patched, but solid beneath their tires. The trees pressed closer here, evergreens and bare oaks creating a corridor that seemed to swallow the weak afternoon light. They crossed the bridge over Nakin Creek, the water dark and sluggish below. On the right, through the bare winter trees, Claire caught a glimpse of old stone walls. The ruins of a mill, she realized. Blackened timbers jutted from collapsed walls like broken bones. Something about it made her skin crawl. "What happened there?" she asked. David glanced over. "Old mill. Burned down years ago, I think, before we were born." The ruins disappeared behind them as the road curved, but Claire felt like they were still being watched. Claire had never been to Ironwood Retreat, though her mother used to talk about it. The place she and Claire's father used to come when they were dating, before the girls were born. A romantic spot, her mother said. Peaceful, special. Claire thought it looked like the set of a horror movie. The road curved, and suddenly they were pulling into a gravel parking lot. Ironwood Retreat spread before them. A main lodge built from dark timber and stone, with a massive fieldstone fireplace visible through the windows. 10 individual guest units flanked it, 5 on either side, each with its own porch and rocking chair. Beyond them, Claire could make out a drained swimming pool and what looked like a maintenance shed. The place was empty except for one car already parked near the lodge. Claire recognized Jenny's blue Buick and felt her stomach tighten. "See, they're already here," David said brightly. "We can caravan out to the bridge together." He parked beside Jenny's car, and they climbed out into the cold. The air smelled of pine and coming snow, sharp and clean, in a way that made the city seem very far away. Jenny and Ryan emerged from the lodge, where they'd apparently been waiting in the warmth. Jenny wore a long wool coat, her blonde hair pulled back. Ryan stood beside her, tall and broad-shouldered in his business casual, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "You made it," Jenny said, her smile bright and brittle. "The bridge is just a few miles from here, right?" "About 3 miles, David said. "Old Mill Road, rock bridge where it crosses Nakin Creek. Should be quick. In and out, 2 hours tops." A man appeared in the lodge doorway. Late 50s, weathered face, flannel shirt over thermal underwear. He moved with the deliberate care of someone who'd spent too many winters in the cold. "You folks looking for directions?" he asked. "We're heading to Rock Bridge," David said, "to scatter my mother-in-law's ashes. We were just using your parking lot as a meeting spot. Hope that's okay." The man's eyes moved to Claire, then to the Kroger bag she was carrying. Something shifted in his expression. "Frank Harmon," he said. "I run this place." He looked up at the sky, at the clouds that had thickened during their drive. Rockbridge is about 3 miles up Old Mill Road. Road's narrow, not maintained in winter, easy to get turned around if you can't see clear. "We'll be careful," David said. Frank's jaw tightened. "Storm's coming. You can see it building. You got maybe an hour, 2 at most, before it hits hard." "The forecast said clear through Sunday," Ryan said. Forecast doesn't know this hollow, Frank said. He looked at the four of them, at the urn in Claire's hands, and something knowing passed across his face. You're welcome to wait it out here if the weather turns. I keep a few units ready just in case. We won't need them, David said confidently. In and out, 2 hours tops. Frank nodded slowly, but he didn't look convinced. Lodge'll be open if you need it. Coffee's on. He went back inside, and the four of them stood in the parking lot. The temperature was dropping. Claire could feel it, that particular kind of cold that promised snow. So, David said, should we take both cars, or just one? One car, Ryan said. Road's narrow, easier to turn around if we need to. They decided on David and Claire's car. Bigger, better tires. They all climbed in, Claire holding the urn, Jenny and Ryan in the back seat. The silence was thick with 8 years of unspoken resentment. David started the engine, but before he could put it in gear, the lodge door opened again. Frank stood there, holding something. He walked over to David's window. Here, Frank said, handing David a folded piece of paper. Hand-drawn map. Old Mill Road branches a few times. Easy to get lost if you don't know it. And this. He held out an iron horseshoe. For luck. David took both, looking puzzled. Thanks. Frank's eyes moved to Claire and Jenny in turn. Rock Bridge. That's where it bends, where the creek goes dark. You scatter those ashes and you come right back. Don't linger. Don't wait for the moment to feel right. You do what you came to do and you leave. Understand? Sure, David said, clearly humoring the strange old man. Frank stepped back from the car. I'll keep the coffee hot. David pulled out of the parking lot, following the hand-drawn map toward Old Mill Road. In the rearview mirror, Claire watched Frank standing in the parking lot, watching them go. The expression on his face wasn't welcoming. It was wary. Scene 2. The planning meeting. Old Mill Road wound through the woods like a ribbon of cracked pavement, narrow and dark beneath the bare branches. David drove carefully, hands tight on the wheel, eyes tracking the edges of the road through the thickening snow. The windshield wipers worked steadily, their rhythm the only sound besides the heater's rattle. Claire sat in the passenger seat, the Kroger bag with the urn balanced on her lap. Behind her, Jenny and Ryan occupied the back seat like strangers on a bus. Nobody spoke. 8 years of silence didn't break just because you were trapped in a car together. The snow was getting heavier. Claire watched it fall through the side window, fat white flakes that stuck to the glass before the wind tore them away. The forecast had said clear. The forecast had been wrong. How much farther? Ryan asked, his voice too loud in the quiet car. David glanced at Frank's hand-drawn map on the dashboard. Maybe another mile. The road curves twice more, then we should see the bridge. Should see it, Ryan muttered. That's reassuring. It's marked clearly on the map, David said, an edge creeping into his voice. Claire looked out at the woods pressing close on both sides. The trees were skeletal, stripped bare by winter, their branches reaching toward the grey sky like clawed hands. Everything looked the same. Every curve, every stretch of road, identical to the last. There, Jenny said suddenly, leaning forward between the front seats. Is that it? Through the snow, Claire could make out a widening in the road ahead. The trees opened up slightly, and there was the creek, dark water moving sluggishly between banks lined with snow-covered rocks. The road dropped down to cross at water level, the old Ford Bridge that gave Rock Bridge its name. Pavement laid directly over the natural rock crossing. David pulled to the side of the road just before the bridge and cut the engine. For a moment, nobody moved. The snow fell harder now, building on the windshield, obscuring their view. Well, David said, here we are. They climbed out into the cold. The temperature had dropped noticeably, even in the short time since they'd left Ironwood. Claire's breath fogged in the air, and the wind cut through her coat like it was made of paper. The creek was beautiful in a stark winter way. Ice clung to the rocks at the edges, and the water in the middle ran dark and deep. Snow covered everything else, pristine and white, unmarked by footprints or tire tracks. They were the first people here in days, maybe weeks. Mom would have liked this, Jenny said quietly, hugging herself against the cold. The quiet, the peace. Claire looked at her sister. Jenny's face was soft, almost wistful, looking at the creek like it held answers to questions she'd never asked. She never liked quiet, Claire said. She liked pretending everything was fine. Jenny's expression hardened. Claire, don't. Don't what? Tell the truth. Not here. Not now. David stepped between them, his hands raised like a referee. Let's just do what we came to do. Please. He pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. Notes he'd written, Claire realized. David always needed structure, needed words on a page to make sense of moments like this. He unfolded the paper with shaking hands. Whether from cold or emotion, Claire couldn't tell. We're here today, David began, his voice carrying across the water, to honor the memory of Eleanor Mitchell, to return her to a place she loved, to let go of the past and... He paused, glancing at Claire and Jenny. To let go. The wind rose, carrying his words away. Snowflakes caught in Claire's eyelashes. She blinked them away. Claire? David said gently. Did you want to say something? Claire opened the Kroger bag, pulled out the plastic container. Her mother, reduced to this. She looked at the urn, then at the dark water of Knacking Creek, then at Jenny's expectant face. Mom did her best, Claire said, the words flat and cold. She wasn't perfect. None of us are. It was inadequate. It was a lie. But it was all she had. Jenny stepped forward, her hands clasped in front of her like she was praying. She loved us. I know she did. Even when things were hard. Even when. She trailed off, swallowing. She wanted us together. That's why we're here. Claire bit back the response that rose in her throat. Did she? Did she want us together? Or did she just want to avoid the ugliness of us being apart? But she said nothing. Just unscrewed the lid of the urn. The ashes were grey and coarse, with fragments of bone visible among the powder. Claire tipped the urn, and the wind caught some of the ashes, scattering them across the snow and into the water. They floated for a moment on the dark surface, then sank. Jenny reached out, and Claire let her take the urn. Jenny scattered more ashes, her hand shaking, tears running down her face that she didn't bother to wipe away. Maybe a third of the ashes were gone when Ryan spoke. We need to go. Claire looked up. The snow had intensified dramatically in the past few minutes. What had been steady snowfall was now a driving wall of white. The wind had risen from a breeze to a gale, tearing at their coats, stealing their breath. Just let us finish, Jenny said, holding the urn close. Now, Ryan insisted. Look at this. We need to go now. David turned in a slow circle, taking in the storm. The woods had disappeared behind curtains of snow. The road they'd driven in on was already obscured, the tire tracks filling fast. He's right, David said. We'll come back tomorrow when it clears. Finish then. But we're here now, Jenny protested. And we need to leave now, Ryan said, taking her arm. Come on. Claire moved to take the urn from Jenny, and that's when she saw it. A figure in the trees. Maybe 30 feet away, barely visible through the snow. Wearing something pale, a nightgown or hospital gown, the kind with the open back that Claire had dressed her mother in countless times during those final months. The figure stood perfectly still, despite the wind that tore at everything else. Did you see that? Claire said, her voice strange in her own ears. See what? Jenny asked. Claire pointed, but the wind shifted and the snow thickened, and when she looked again, the figure was gone. If it had ever been there at all. Claire? David's voice, concerned. See what? The snow was so thick now she could barely see the car, and it was only 20 feet away. Nothing, Claire said. Let's go. They scrambled toward the car, the wind pushing them, pulling them, trying to knock them off balance. Jenny stumbled on the slick pavement, and in the chaos, the urn slipped from her grasp. It hit the ground and bounced, the lid coming loose, more ashes spilling across the snow. No, Jenny cried, dropping to her knees. But the wind caught the spilled ashes immediately, whipping them away into the storm. The urn rolled toward the edge of the road, and Ryan lunged for it, slipping on ice, going down hard on one knee. Leave it, David shouted over the wind. We have to go. Ryan grabbed the urn, what was left of it, and they stumbled to the car. Snow followed them inside as they piled in, the interior suddenly freezing and wet. Claire's hands shook as she fastened her seatbelt. Jenny was crying, her face buried in her hands. David started the engine, cranked the heat up high, turned the wipers on full speed. They worked frantically, barely keeping up with the snow already covering the windshield. Can you even see? Ryan asked from the back, still breathing hard. Enough, David said, but his voice was tight with fear. He pulled onto the road, or where the road should be. The pavement was invisible under snow, the edges unmarked, the whole world reduced to white and more white. The headlights reflected off the falling snow, making it harder to see, not easier. Claire looked back at Ryan, who was examining the urn in his lap. More than half empty now. Most of their mother's ashes were scattered across Rockbridge, blown into the creek, lost in the storm. "We'll have to come back tomorrow," David said, reading her thoughts. "Finish properly. If they made it back at all." Through her window, for just a moment, Claire thought she saw the figure again, keeping pace with the car, walking through the storm like it was a summer day, wearing that pale nightgown, face still hidden. Claire blinked, and it was gone. "Just get us back to Ironwood," she said quietly. David nodded, both hands on the wheel, leaning forward to peer through the windshield at a road he could no longer see. Behind them, Rockbridge disappeared into the storm. The creek flowed on, dark and cold, carrying the ashes of Eleanor Mitchell toward whatever waited downstream, and in the woods something watched them go. Scene 3. The Blizzard. The first 10 minutes weren't so bad. David drove with both hands gripping the wheel, leaning forward until his nose was almost touching the windshield. The wipers worked overtime, scraping back and forth, clearing snow just long enough for him to catch glimpses of the road ahead. Maybe 10 feet of visibility, maybe less. "Just follow our tire tracks back," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. But there were no tire tracks. The snow had covered them completely in the time they'd been at the bridge. The road was a blank white canvas, and David was drawing their path across it blind. Claire watched the trees slide past on her side, trying to use them as landmarks, that oak with the split trunk, that cluster of pines, that fallen log. But everything looked the same. Winter had stripped the woods down to essentials, and in a blizzard, even essentials disappeared. "How much farther?" Jenny's voice from the back seat, small and frightened. "Not far," David said. "Maybe 2 miles. "You said it was 3 miles to the bridge," Ryan pointed out. "It felt longer on the way there. The snow." Ryan didn't respond, but Claire could feel his skepticism like a physical presence in the car. The heater blasted warm air that did nothing to cut the chill settling into her bones. 15 minutes in, and something was wrong. The road curved, but it curved the wrong way. Claire was sure of it. They should have passed the fork by now, the place where Old Mill Road branched, and Frank's map showed the way back to Maple Grove Road. But there was no fork, just more road winding through identical trees. "Are we going the right way?" Ryan asked. "Of course," David said, too quickly. "It's one road." "Then why haven't we hit the main road yet?" "The snow's slowing us down, makes everything take longer." But that wasn't it, and they all knew it. Time felt wrong, stretched out and distorted, like they'd been driving for an hour instead of 15 minutes. The woods pressed closer on both sides, the bare branches reaching over the road like they were trying to close it off completely. 20 minutes, and Claire was certain they were lost. The road kept curving, winding back on itself in ways she didn't remember from the drive out. David checked the map, but it was useless. You needed landmarks to use a map, and there were no landmarks, just snow and trees and more snow. "I think we're lost," Claire said quietly. "We're not lost," David insisted. "It's just the snow. Makes everything look different." "David, I know where I'm going." But he didn't. Claire could hear it in his voice, see it in the way his knuckles had gone white on the steering wheel. They were lost in Grindstone Hollow, in the middle of a blizzard, and admitting it wouldn't change anything except make the fear more real. 25 minutes in, Ryan spoke from the back seat. "We passed that tree before." "What tree?" David asked. "That one, with the broken branch hanging down. I saw it 10 minutes ago." "You're seeing things," David said. "All the trees look the same. I'm telling you, we've been here before." Claire looked at the tree as they passed it. Broken branch, hanging at an angle like a broken arm. She couldn't be sure if they'd passed it before, but something about it felt familiar. Like déjà vu, but colder. "Maybe we should stop," Claire suggested. "Wait it out. The storm might clear." "It's not clearing," David said, and there was something in his voice that made Claire turn to look at him. His face was pale, jaw clenched, eyes wide. He was terrified. "We keep moving. We have to keep moving." Claire didn't argue. What would they do if they stopped? Sit in the car and freeze? The heater was working now, but if they ran out of gas, they'd have nothing. And Frank had warned them. The hollow plays tricks. People get lost. 30 minutes. The storm was a living thing now, battering the car, screaming around the windows. Visibility dropped to maybe 5 feet. David slowed to a crawl, barely moving, trying to stay on the road by feel more than sight. Then the headlights caught something. A figure. Standing in the middle of the road directly ahead. Jenny screamed. David slammed on the brakes, and the car lurched, tires losing grip on the snow-covered pavement. They slid sideways, the world spinning, everyone shouting, grabbing for something to hold on to. The car hit a drift and stopped hard, tilted at an angle, facing the wrong direction. Silence, except for the wind and their ragged breathing. They were stopped sideways across the road, the headlights pointing off into the woods instead of down the pavement. And there, caught in the edge of the light, visible through the side windows, was the figure. Closer now, maybe 15 feet away. It wore a pale nightgown that whipped in the wind but never seemed to actually move. The fabric hung wrong, like it was underwater instead of in air. Claire couldn't see the face. The angle was wrong, or the snow was too thick, or maybe there was no face to see. But the shape was right. The height was right. The way it stood, weight on one hip, head tilted slightly to the left. That's... Jenny's voice broke. That looks like... I know, Claire whispered. Their mother, standing in a blizzard in the middle of Old Mill Road, watching them. What are you seeing? Ryan demanded. What is that? There's nothing there, David said, but his voice shook. It's the snow. Shadows. The figure took a step toward the car. Jenny lunged for her door handle. We have to help her. She's out there. Ryan grabbed her, pulled her back. What are you doing? Are you crazy? Let me go. That's Mom. That's not Mom. Claire turned in her seat, grabbed Jenny's arm. Jenny, listen to me. That's not her. Mom is dead. You know that. The figure took another step. Closer. Close enough now that Claire could see details. The nightgown was the one from the hospital, the blue one with the small flowers, the one their mother had died in. And there was something wrong with the way the figure moved, joints bending at angles that weren't quite right, feet not quite touching the ground. We need to go, David said. His hands fumbled with the gear shift, shaking so badly he could barely hold it. We need to go right now. He tried to straighten the car, put it in gear. The wheels spun, high-pitched whine cutting through the storm. They were stuck. The figure took another step, then another. Get out, David said. We have to push. Are you insane? Ryan stared at him. You want to go out there with that thing? We don't have a choice. David threw his door open and stumbled out into the storm. After a moment, Ryan swore and followed. The doors slammed shut and the two men disappeared into the whiteout, barely visible even though they were right outside the car. Claire and Jenny sat in the back of their seats, staring out the side windows. The figure was still there, but it had stopped moving. Just standing, watching, waiting. Did we really see her? Jenny whispered. At the bridge? In the road? Is that really Mom? Claire kept her eyes on the figure. I don't know. Claire, I'm scared. Something in Jenny's voice made Claire turn. Her little sister sat huddled against the door, arms wrapped around herself, tears streaming down her face. She looked small, young. Like she had when they were children, and their father's footsteps would come down the hall at night. I know, Claire said, and reached across the seat to take Jenny's hand. Me too. It was the first time they'd touched in 8 years. Outside, barely visible through the snow, David and Ryan were pushing. Claire could hear them shouting at each other, their voices torn apart by the wind. The car rocked, wheels spinning, trying to find purchase. When Claire looked back at where the figure had been, it was gone. Just snow, just wind, just the empty road. The car lurched forward suddenly, wheels catching. David and Ryan threw themselves back inside, covered with snow, breath coming in gasps, faces red from cold and exertion. Ryan shouted, "Just drive." David didn't need to be told twice. He put the car in gear and started forward slowly, carefully, back on the road, or what he hoped was the road. His whole body was shaking, whether from cold or fear Claire couldn't tell. They drove in silence, slowly, blindly, following nothing but hope and desperation. And then through the snow, lights appeared, golden, steady, warm. There! David's voice cracked with relief. That's Ironwood. Are you sure? Ryan asked. It has to be. It has to be. They followed the lights like drowning people toward shore. The 5 minutes it took to reach them felt like an hour. But the lights grew stronger, clearer, and then the lodge materialized out of the storm, solid and real, and they were pulling into the parking lot. Frank stood in the office doorway like he'd been waiting for them. They stumbled out of the car, legs weak, hands numb. Claire slipped on the ice and David caught her. They made it to the office and pushed inside, all 4 of them crowding into the small space, bringing snow and cold with them. Frank closed the door behind them, looked at their faces, knew. "How long were we gone?" Ryan asked, checking his watch with shaking hands. Frank glanced at the clock on the wall. "About an hour and a half. It felt like 6 hours. It felt like days." "You didn't make it to the bridge," Frank said. "It wasn't a question." "We did," David said. "But the storm, we couldn't finish. He looked at Claire. "We dropped it in the chaos. Most of the ashes are still there." Frank's expression didn't change. "Storm's not clearing tomorrow. Maybe not Sunday either. You're stuck here now." "We have to leave," Jenny said, her voice rising. "The kids are with Ryan's parents. They're expecting us tomorrow night. We have to get back." "Kids are safe in Columbus," Frank said. "You're the ones in danger." "From what?" Ryan demanded. "A snowstorm? We'll wait it out. Roads will clear." Frank looked at him for a long moment. Then he pulled a ring of keys from his pocket. "I'll get you settled. Units 3 and 5. They're next to each other. Stay close tonight. Don't go outside alone." He paused, his weathered face grave. "And if you see anything, if you hear anything, don't open your doors. Not for anyone. Not for anything. Understand?" "What are you talking about?" David asked. But Frank was already moving, leading them out of the office toward the units. The snow fell harder now, building in drifts against the doors, covering the parking lot in white. 4 people who'd come for a quick ceremony, now trapped at Ironwood Retreat with something that wore their mother's face, and night was coming. Scene 4, first night, the decorations. Frank showed them to their units with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times. Units 3 and 5, side by side, identical in their simple functionality. 1 room each, double bed, small kitchenette, bathroom with a shower, wood-paneled walls, faded quilts, windows that looked out at the parking lot and the woods beyond. The radiators clanked and hissed, working hard against the cold. "Heat works. Hot water works. Stay inside tonight." Frank handed David and Ryan their keys. "You need anything, come to the lodge. Don't wander." "Wander where?" Ryan asked. "There's nothing here but snow." Frank looked at him with those weathered, knowing eyes. That's not quite true. He left before anyone could ask what he meant. Claire and David stood in Unit 3, dripping melted snow onto the linoleum. David pulled off his soaked coat and hung it over a chair to dry. Claire sat on the bed, still shivering, unable to get warm despite the radiator's efforts. "We should eat something," David said, digging through the bag of snacks they'd brought. Crackers, string cheese, apples that were probably bruised from being jostled around. "Keep our strength up." Claire took a package of crackers from him but didn't open it, just held it, staring at nothing. "Claire? We saw her," Claire said quietly. "At the bridge, on the road. We both saw her." David sat beside her on the bed. "It was the snow, playing tricks. That's all." "You saw her too. I know you did." David was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Yeah, I did." They ate in silence, crackers that tasted like cardboard, cheese that was too cold and too rubbery. But it was something, and something was better than nothing. Outside, the storm continued its assault, wind howling around the corners of the unit, snow building against the windows. By 7 o'clock, exhaustion had settled into Claire's bones. The adrenaline from the drive, from being lost, from seeing that figure in the road, it had all burned away, leaving her hollow and tired. She changed into her nightgown and climbed under the quilt while David took a shower. She must have dozed, because when she opened her eyes, it was dark outside and David was standing at the bathroom door, staring at something. "Claire," he said, "did you do this?" She got up, joints protesting, and joined him. Above the bathroom mirror, tied with a red ribbon, was a sprig of holly, fresh, green. The berries bright red and perfectly round. "No," Claire said. "Did you?" "I thought maybe you." David reached up to touch it, then stopped. "Where did this come from?" Claire turned slowly, scanning the unit. More decorations had appeared while they'd been eating, while she'd been dozing. A wreath hung on the inside of the door. Garland was draped over the kitchenette, tied with red and gold ribbon. On the small table by the window, a jar candle sat unlit, but Claire could smell cinnamon and pine. "This wasn't here before," she whispered. "Maybe Frank." But even David didn't sound convinced. A knock at the door made them both jump. Claire opened it to find Jenny standing there, Ryan behind her, both looking shaken. "Do you have decorations in your unit?" Jenny asked without preamble. Claire stepped aside, let them see. Jenny and Ryan came in, looked around, their faces growing paler by the second. "We have them too," Ryan said. "Showed up while we were eating. We didn't bring any of this. We didn't." He ran a hand through his hair. "Where did it come from?" "Frank?" David suggested, but they all knew that wasn't right. Frank had been clear. He didn't do Christmas. No decorations at Ironwood. And even if he had decided to decorate, how would he have gotten into locked units without them noticing? "We should ask him," Jenny said. "Right now." They pulled on their coats and ventured back out into the storm. The walk to the office was only 50 feet, but the wind cut through their clothes like knives, and the snow stung their faces. Frank's office was dark, except for a single light in the back. David knocked, then knocked again, louder. Frank appeared in a robe, grey hair mussed from sleep or trying to sleep. He took one look at their faces, and his expression hardened. "The decorations," he said. "Not a question. How did you know?" Claire asked. "Because it started." Frank looked past them at the storm, at the units barely visible through the snow. "Come in. You shouldn't be out there." They crowded into the small office. Frank didn't offer them coffee or a place to sit, just stood with his arms crossed, looking like a man who'd seen this before and hadn't liked it then either. "We need to know what's happening," David said. "Decorations are appearing in our rooms. We're seeing things on the road. Our dead mother. Or something that looks like her." "The Yuletide," Frank said simply. "The what?" Frank moved to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder, spread old papers across his desk. Incident reports, handwritten in faded ink, dates going back years. "December 1975, Frank read. "Family of 4, parents fighting, kids caught in the middle. They saw their dead grandmother in the woods. Decorations appeared in their unit overnight. Food manifested on Christmas morning. A full feast, everything perfect. They ate it." He looked up at them. "We found them 3 days later, frozen. Still sitting at the table, still smiling." Jenny made a small sound in her throat. Ryan put his arm around her. "December 1978, Frank continued. "Couple, newlyweds. But the marriage was already breaking. They saw the wife's dead father. He invited them to Christmas dinner in the lodge. When I got there, the table was set for 3. They were sitting there, talking to an empty chair. Wouldn't leave, wouldn't listen. I had to call the sheriff to get them out." "This is insane," Ryan said, but his voice shook. "Is it?" Frank closed the folder. "You saw something out there today, all of you. Something wearing the face of someone you loved, someone you lost. And now decorations are appearing in your rooms. Christmas decorations, fresh and new and perfect. Tell me that's not happening." No one spoke. "This place remembers," Frank said quietly. "And something here, the Yuletide, my father called it. It comes for people who are performing. People who are pretending to be happy when they're not. People who gather for Christmas when they shouldn't. It offers them what they think they want. Perfect Christmas. Perfect family. But it's a lie. And if you accept it, if you eat the food, open the presents, play along, it takes you." "How do we stop it?" Claire asked. "You stay away from the decorations. Don't touch them. Don't move them. Don't accept anything else that appears. Don't eat food you didn't make yourself." Frank looked directly at Claire and Jenny. "And for God's sake," he paused, "stop pretending, stop performing. If you have something to say to each other, say it. The thing that's here, it feeds on the lie, the gap between what you show and what you feel. The wider that gap, the stronger it gets." "We're leaving in the morning," Jenny said. "Storm or no storm." "You can try," Frank said. "But the Hollow doesn't let go easy. Not once it has you. And it has you now. All of you." They walked back to their units in silence. The snow had let up slightly, but the temperature had dropped even further. Claire's breath frosted in the air, and her feet felt like blocks of ice in her boots. At their doors, they paused. "This is insane," Ryan said again. "Some old man's ghost stories." but he didn't sound convinced. "Lock your doors," Jenny said, looking at Claire. "Okay?" "You too," Claire replied. For a moment, they just looked at each other. 8 years of silence between them. 8 years of resentment and guilt and things left unsaid. And now they were trapped here, in this place where something fed on secrets and lies. "Good night," Jenny said softly. "Good night." They retreated to their separate units. Claire locked the door behind them, though she didn't know what good it would do. David went to the window, pulled the curtain back to look out at the storm. He stopped, sucking in a breath. Claire joined him. More decorations had appeared while they were at Frank's office. Garland was strung across the window frame, tied with red ribbons. A small Christmas tree sat on the dresser, decorated with tiny ornaments. The lights weren't plugged in, but they glowed softly anyway, casting shadows that moved wrong across the walls. And on the bed, carefully arranged, were 2 wrapped presents. One with a tag that read Claire, one that read David. "We didn't bring those in," David whispered. "We've been here the whole time, except for the lodge." "I know." They stood staring at the presents. The urge to open them was almost overwhelming. They were wrapped so beautifully, so perfectly. Red paper with gold ribbon. They looked expensive. They looked like love. "Don't touch them," Claire said, as much to herself as to David. "I wasn't going to." But his hand had been reaching out. Claire took it, pulled him back from the bed, away from the presents and their silent promise of something wonderful inside. Outside, somewhere in the storm, someone was singing. A Christmas carol. Beautiful and clear despite the wind. Silent Night. The voice was female. Pure. Familiar in a way that made Claire's stomach twist. She knew that voice. She'd heard it every day for 2 years, getting weaker and weaker as cancer ate her mother from the inside. But at the end, in those final days when pain medication made her loopy and nostalgic, she'd sung old Christmas carols from her childhood. Silent Night was her favorite. The singing continued, circling the building. Growing closer, David grabbed Claire's hand. "That's not real." "I know. But it sounded real. It sounded like her mother, young and healthy and happy, the way she must have sounded 50 years ago when Christmas still meant something magical." The singing stopped outside their window, a soft knock on the glass. "Girls?" The voice was muffled by the window, but clear enough. "Girls, are you awake? It's Christmas. Come see what I brought you." Through the wall, Claire heard Jenny scream, high and terrified and full of recognition. The thing outside their window laughed. It sounded almost like love. Then it moved on, footsteps crunching through the snow, circling toward Jenny and Ryan's unit. Claire sank onto the bed, careful to avoid the presents, shaking. David sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them looked at the presents waiting for them on the quilt. Outside, the singing resumed. Different carol this time. "O Come All Ye Faithful." And in Unit 5, Claire could hear Jenny crying. The first night wasn't over yet. The Yuletide. Scene 5, The Long Night. The singing circled the building 3 times before it stopped. Claire lay in the darkness of Unit 3, David beside her, both of them rigid under the quilt. The presents sat at the foot of the bed where they'd appeared, wrapped in paper that seemed to glow faintly in the dark. Neither of them had touched them. Neither of them would. The voice had been so clear, so familiar. Her mother's voice, young and strong, the way it must have sounded before cigarettes and cancer had stolen it away. Singing carols in the snow like she was inviting them to something wonderful. But it wasn't wonderful. It wasn't even her mother. Claire stared at the ceiling, counting the water stains in the acoustic tiles. 7, 8, 9. Anything to keep from thinking about the presents, about what might be inside them, about what she might want most. "Are you awake?" David whispered. "Yes." The singing stopped. "I know." They were quiet for a moment. Then David said, "We should try to sleep. We'll need our strength for tomorrow, for getting out of here." But Claire knew neither of them would sleep. Not with the presents watching them from the foot of the bed. Not with the decorations that had appeared from nowhere, hanging on the walls like accusations. The radiator clanked and hissed, working against the cold that seeped through the windows. Outside, the storm had settled into a steady rhythm. Snow falling, wind howling, the world disappearing under white. Around midnight, Claire heard it. Footsteps. slow and deliberate, crunching through the snow outside their unit, walking back and forth, like someone pacing, waiting for something. David heard it too. His hand found hers under the quilt, squeezed tight. The footsteps stopped at their door. Silence, so complete it felt solid. Then a soft voice, barely audible through the door. "Claire? Jenny? Are you girls awake?" Their mother's voice. Not singing now, just talking. Normal and conversational, like she'd just come by for a visit. "I brought presents," the voice continued. "Don't you want to see what I brought you?" David's grip on Claire's hand became painful. "I know you're in there, girls. I can hear you breathing." Claire pressed her free hand against her mouth, trying to quiet her breathing. The voice knew they were listening. It knew they were afraid. "Jennifer's crying," the voice outside said. "She always was the sensitive one. Claire, you were always stronger, harder. Is that why you let me die alone?" Claire bit down on her knuckle to keep from responding. "Don't engage," Frank had said. "Don't open the door. Don't talk to it. I was so cold at the end," the voice went on. It sounded sad now, plaintive. "So cold and so alone. I called for you. Did you know that? In those last hours. I called your name, but you'd already gone home, left me with strangers." That wasn't true. Claire had been there. She'd held her mother's hand through those final hours, listening to the death rattle, watching the monitors flatline. She'd been there when Jenny hadn't. But the lie still hurt. "Open the door, Claire. Let me in. We have so much to talk about." The doorknob rattled. Once. Twice. Then footsteps moved away, crunching through the snow toward Unit 5. Toward Jenny. Claire strained to hear what was happening, but the wind swallowed everything. Just the crunch of footsteps moving away, then silence. Claire started to get up, but David pulled her back down. "Don't," he whispered. "Frank said don't engage. That's my sister, and that's not your mother." They lay in the darkness, listening. The voice at Jenny's door was too muffled to make out words, but the tone was clear. Coaxing, loving, persuasive. Minutes passed. 5. 10. The voice continued its patient monologue. Then silence again. The footsteps moved away from the units entirely, crunching across the parking lot toward the lodge. Claire waited, straining to hear. Was it leaving? Was it over? From somewhere in the distance came a new sound, faint but growing stronger. Bells, sleigh bells, bright and cheerful, jingling through the storm. Getting closer, like something was coming down Old Mill Road toward Ironwood Retreat. The sound circled the property once, twice, then faded into the wind. After that, nothing. The storm continued. The radiator kept up its metallic clanking, but the voice was gone. The footsteps were gone. The bells were gone. Claire waited for something else to happen, for the singing to start again, for the voice to return. But the hours crawled by in silence, broken only by the wind and the snow building against the windows. She must have dozed eventually, because when she opened her eyes, pale grey light was filtering through the curtains. Morning, Saturday, Christmas Eve. David was already awake, standing at the window. His shoulders were tense. "David, look at this." Claire got out of bed, joints stiff from lying rigid all night. She crossed to the window and looked out. The world had disappeared under snow. The cars in the parking lot were completely buried now, nothing but white mounds marking where they'd been. The road was gone, erased under drifts that had to be 3 feet deep, and it was still falling, thick and steady, adding to what was already there. "We're not leaving today," David said quietly. "The storm has to stop eventually." "Does it?" Claire looked at him. His face was haggard, dark circles under his eyes. He looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "We need to talk to Frank," she said. "Figure out what to do." "What can we do? We're trapped here. We'll think of something." But even as she said it, Claire didn't believe it, because looking out at that sea of white, at the world erased by snow, she had the distinct feeling that the storm wasn't going to stop. Not until the Yuletide got what it wanted, whatever that was. A knock at the door made them both jump. Claire grabbed her coat, pulled it on over her nightgown, and checked the peephole. Ryan stood outside, looking worse than David. His hair was wild, his eyes red and swollen. Claire opened the door. "Where's Jenny?" "Still in the unit. She won't talk to me. Won't look at me." Ryan's voice was hoarse. "That thing last night, it said things. About us. About our marriage. True things. It says things to hurt you. That's what it does." But they were true. Ryan looked at her with something like desperation. "Your phone working?" We haven't tried this morning. David picked up the rotary phone from the small table by the window, put it to his ear. His face went flat. Still dead. Mine too, Ryan said. We're not going anywhere. Through the window, Claire saw lights come on in the lodge. Frank was up, getting the place ready for the day, for whatever came next. We should go over there, Claire said. All of us. Together. Jenny won't come out. Then you tell her she has to, because whatever's happening, we're safer together than we are apart. Ryan nodded and headed back to Unit 5. Claire and David dressed quickly, pulling on layers against the cold. The presents were still at the foot of the bed, untouched. The decorations still hung on the walls, innocent and festive in the morning light, but they didn't feel innocent anymore. They felt like a trap waiting to close. The Yuletide, Scene 6, Christmas Eve morning, snowbound. They gathered in the main lodge 15 minutes later, all four of them moving stiffly in the cold morning air. The building felt cavernous after the cramped units, and somehow colder despite the fire Frank had burning in the massive stone fireplace. Frank stood behind the counter, pouring coffee into white ceramic mugs. He looked like he hadn't slept. The shadows under his eyes were dark, his movements careful and deliberate. Roads won't be clear until Sunday at earliest, he said, setting mugs in front of them. County doesn't plough Old Mill Road in winter. Jenny's face fell. She'd been holding on to hope they could leave today. Frank set a plate on the counter, toast, scrambled eggs, simple breakfast food, but none of them reached for it. Claire looked around the lodge. In daylight, it looked shabbier than she remembered. The wood paneling was water-stained in places, the furniture worn and mismatched. But it was the decorations that caught her attention. More had appeared. A Christmas tree now stood in the corner by the window, 6 feet tall and full-branched. It hadn't been there when Frank had warned them last night. Lights twinkled along its length, white and steady. Ornaments hung from every available space, glass balls, wooden figures, delicate icicles that caught the firelight. And underneath, wrapped in bright paper, were presents. 4 of them, neat and square. Garland draped across the mantel above the fireplace. Stockings hung below it, 4 of them in a row, with names written in white glitter. Claire, David, Jenny, Ryan. Don't touch any of it, Frank said, following her gaze. It'll keep manifesting. Getting worse, just stay away from it. They sat around the old Formica table, drinking Frank's coffee. The silence was heavy. Outside, the snow continued its steady assault. But it did matter. Claire could see it in the way her sister's hands trembled around the coffee mug, in the way she kept glancing at the door like she wanted to run. They sat in the lodge for hours. The fire burned down, and Frank rebuilt it. The snow continued falling outside, steady and relentless. The tree lights kept blinking. The presents sat under the branches, patient and waiting. And from somewhere in the building, so faint it might have been imagination, came the sound of music. Christmas carols. Instrumental. Beautiful and wrong. Around midday, the couples had tried to retreat to their units. The forced proximity was suffocating. But the units were freezing, the small heaters losing their battle against the dropping temperature. Within an hour, they'd all drifted back to the lodge, drawn by the working fireplace. By 2 in the afternoon, they were congregated around the hearth again, pulling chairs close, trying to stay warm. Ryan paced. David read a 2-year-old Sports Illustrated he'd found on a side table. Jenny stared into the fire. Claire watched them all, feeling the weight of everything unsaid pressing down like the snow outside. This is what you wanted, she thought. You wanted us all together. Forced proximity. No way out. Happy now, David? But she didn't say it. Just like she didn't say all the other things that crowded her throat, pushing to get out. And in the corner, the Christmas tree lights blinked on and off, keeping time with her heartbeat. Outside, the day started to fade toward evening. The grey light dimmed to charcoal. The temperature dropped further. And somewhere in the distance, barely audible under the wind, someone started singing again. Silent Night. The same pure voice from last night. Getting closer. Frank stood and moved to the window. He looked out at the darkening lot, his face grim. It's starting, he said. The Yuletide, Scene 7. Christmas Eve afternoon, the gifts. The presents under the tree had changed. Claire noticed it first. She'd been staring at them for the past 20 minutes, her mind numb from the forced proximity and the relentless cold seeping through the walls. Before, there had been 4 boxes wrapped in bright paper. Now there were more. 6, 8, piled in a neat stack, ribbons curled perfectly, tags tied to each one with twine. "Those weren't there before," she said. Everyone looked. David lowered his magazine. Jenny turned from the fire. Ryan stopped pacing mid-stride. "They're multiplying," Ryan said. He was trying to sound dismissive, but his voice cracked on the last word. "Don't go near them," Frank said from his position by the window. He hadn't moved in an hour, standing watch like a sentry. "They're just boxes," Ryan said. "They're not just boxes." Ryan made a sound that might have been a laugh. "This is insane. We're sitting here in a freezing motel, listening to an old man tell us ghost stories while a blizzard buries us alive." "Then go back to your unit," Frank said without turning around. Ryan's face flushed, but he stayed where he was. The afternoon crawled by. David tried to read, but gave up, the magazine forgotten in his lap. Jenny pulled her chair closer to the fire until she was almost touching the hearth. Claire watched the presents grow and shift under the tree, convinced that if she looked away for even a second, more would appear. She wasn't wrong. Every time someone left to use the bathroom or check their unit, another box materialized. By 4 o'clock, there were a dozen gifts stacked in neat rows, all tagged with their names in careful cursive script. "How is it doing that?" Jenny asked. Her voice was very small. Frank finally turned from the window. "It's Christmas Eve. The Yuletide is at its strongest. It can manifest things now. Make them real, or real enough." "Real enough to what?" David asked. "To hurt you if you accept them." Ryan laughed again, that same wrong sound. "You can't hurt someone with a gift. You can if the gift is what they want most, what they've been denying themselves, what they're secretly hungry for." The words settled over them like another layer of snow. Claire felt something twist in her stomach. She looked at the presents, at the neat tags bearing her name. "What do I want most?" She didn't let herself answer that question. "We should eat," Jenny said abruptly. She stood, moving toward the counter where Frank's breakfast still sat. The toast was cold now, the eggs congealed, but it was food. Frank stepped in front of her. "Don't." "What? You made it this morning, and none of you touched it." Frank's voice was hard. "It's been sitting there for hours, in this cold. You don't know what's gotten into it." Jenny stared at the plate. The food looked normal, harmless. But something about the way Frank was looking at it made her step back. "You have food in your units," Frank said. "Snacks you brought. Eat those. Granola bars, crackers, that's it. Then that's what you eat. For how long? We're trapped here. We could be here for days. If you're still here in days, you'll have bigger problems than being hungry." The silence that followed was suffocating. Claire stood, needing to move, needing to do something other than sit and wait. She crossed to the window, looking out at the darkening afternoon. The snow had finally stopped. The sky hung low and grey, heavy with the promise of more. The buried cars looked like strange monuments rising from white drifts. And in the distance, barely visible through the trees, she could see the dark line of Nakin Creek, a black slash cutting through the snow. Something moved near the tree line. Claire pressed closer to the glass, her breath fogging the surface. A figure stood among the bare branches, perfectly still, too far away to see clearly, but the shape was human, or human enough. "Frank," she said. The old man was beside her in 3 strides. He looked where she was pointing. The figure was gone. "Are you sure you saw something?" "Yes." But even as she said it, doubt crept in. The trees were dense there, their branches creating shadows and shapes. It could have been anything. Frank pulled the curtain closed. "Stay away from the windows." "Why?" "Because if it knows you're watching, it'll come closer." A sound from across the room made them both turn. Ryan was standing by the Christmas tree, holding one of the presents. The box was small, wrapped with paper with a blue ribbon. "Ryan, don't," Jenny said. "It's got my name on it." He shook it gently. Something rattled inside. "What's it going to do? Explode?" "Put it down." Frank's voice was hard. Ryan ignored him. His fingers found the edge of the wrapping paper, started to tear. "Ryan," Jenny was on her feet now. "Stop it." "It's fine. It's just—" He ripped the paper away. The box underneath was plain cardboard, unmarked. Ryan lifted the lid. His face went white. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a key. small and brass, with an ornate bow and a long shaft. Old-fashioned, the kind that might fit a door in a Victorian house or a safety deposit box. Ryan stared at it. His hands started to shake. "What is it?" David asked. Ryan didn't answer. He reached into the box, his fingers hovering over the key but not touching it. Then he snapped the lid closed and shoved the box away. It fell to the floor, the key spilling out onto the worn carpet. That's not possible." "What is it?" Jenny asked. She moved toward him, but he flinched away. "Nothing. It's nothing." But his voice was too high, his breathing too fast. Claire looked at the key lying on the floor. It looked ordinary. Old, maybe, but nothing special. Nothing that should make a grown man look like he'd seen a ghost. But Ryan was backing away from it, his face twisted in something between fear and guilt. "It knows," Frank said quietly. "It knows what you want, what you've been hiding." "Shut up," Ryan's voice was sharp. "You don't know anything. I know enough." Frank bent down, picked up the key using the corner of his handkerchief. He didn't touch it directly. "This means something to you?" Ryan's jaw worked. He looked at Jenny, then away. "No. Liar. I said no." The shout echoed in the lodge. Jenny stepped back, her hand going to her mouth. Claire saw tears starting in her sister's eyes. "Ryan," Jenny said softly. "What is that?" "Nothing. It's a trick. Some kind of—" He trailed off, unable to finish. Frank wrapped the key in the handkerchief and set it on the counter. "The Yuletide manifests things from your guilt, your secrets, things you don't want people to know." "I don't have any secrets." But everyone could hear the lie in his voice. Ryan turned and walked out of the lodge. The door slammed behind him, the sound flat in the muffled air. Through the window, Claire watched him cross the parking lot toward Unit 5, his footsteps punching through the snow. Jenny stood frozen, staring at the door. Her face had gone blank, that careful, neutral expression Claire remembered from childhood. The one that meant she was bleeding inside, but would never let it show. "I should go after him," Jenny said. "Let him cool off," David suggested. "He's upset." "He's scared," Frank corrected, "of what that key represents, of what it means someone knows." "Stop it," Jenny said. Her voice cracked. "Just stop." She followed Ryan out, moving quickly, her coat unbuttoned. The door closed behind her with a soft click. David and Claire stood in the lodge with Frank, listening to the fire crackle, staring at the remaining presents under the tree. 11 of them now, tags bearing their names. "Should we open ours?" David asked. He was trying to sound light, but his eyes kept darting to the boxes. "No," Frank and Claire said simultaneously. David nodded. He picked up his magazine again, but Claire could see he wasn't reading. His eyes stared straight without moving. She looked at the presents, at the tags. 3 had her name written in that careful cursive. 3 chances to see what the Yuletide thought she wanted most. What she was hiding from everyone, including herself. She thought about the years taking care of her mother, the endless doctor's appointments, the medications, the slow decline. The way she'd wished, late at night when the house was quiet and her mother's breathing rattled through the walls, that it would just end, that she could have her life back, that the woman who'd failed to protect her would finally, mercifully die. And then she had. And the will had given most of it to Claire. Claire, who'd earned every penny. Who'd sacrificed years, who'd been named executor because Mom trusted her to handle it responsibly. But Jenny had still gotten something, a smaller share, but substantial. Enough that Claire's resentment wasn't about the money itself, it was about the fact that Jenny got anything at all. Perfect Jenny, who'd moved away and never looked back, who'd sent cards and called once a week, but only visited twice a month. Never changed a bedpan or held a basin while their mother vomited from the chemo. Never counted pills or scheduled hospice or signed the DNR papers. Jenny, who showed up for 3 hours twice a month and got paid for it anyway. Claire felt the anger rising in her chest, hot and familiar. She'd carried it for so long it felt like part of her skeleton now, fused to her bones. "Don't," Frank said. She looked at him. "Don't what? Don't feed it. That's what it wants. Your resentment. Your rage. The more you feel it, the stronger it gets." "I'm not feeling anything." "Yes, you are." He gestured to the window. "Look." She turned. The curtain had been closed, but now it hung open, pulled back by invisible hands. Outside, standing in the parking lot between the lodge and the units, was a figure. A woman in a pale blue nightgown, her hair grey and thin, her feet bare in the snow. The lodge door opened. Jenny and Ryan came back in, their faces grim. Whatever had happened in Unit 5, it hadn't gone well. Jenny's eyes were red from crying, and Ryan wouldn't look at anyone. "We should stay together," Jenny said quietly. "Whatever's happening." She stopped, seeing everyone staring out the window. "What is it?" Ryan asked. Claire didn't answer. She just pointed. The woman outside raised her hand and waved, slowly, deliberately, and smiled. "That's not my mother," Claire whispered. "No," Frank agreed, "but it's wearing her face." The figure started walking toward the lodge. Her feet left no prints in the snow. Her nightgown didn't move in the wind, and her eyes, even from this distance, were completely black. "Get away from the window," Frank said. But Claire couldn't move. She watched the thing that looked like her mother cross the parking lot, its movements too smooth, its smile too wide. It reached the porch, climbed the steps, stood outside the door, and knocked. 3 times. Patient, polite, waiting to be let in. The Yuletide, Scene 8, the mother figure. "Don't open the door." Frank's voice cut through the paralysis. Claire took a step back from the window, her legs shaking. The knock came again, 3 times, unhurried. "Girls," a voice called from outside. Soft and familiar, with that slight rasp Claire remembered from years of cigarettes and illness. "Let me in. It's so cold out here." Jenny's breath caught. Hearing the voice was different than seeing the figure. It sounded so real. So much like her. "Is that?" Jenny couldn't finish the sentence. "It's not her," Claire said. But her voice shook. "That's my mother's voice," Jenny whispered. "It's using her voice," Frank said. "It's not her." But they all knew that already. They'd all seen it walk across the parking lot. They'd all seen the black eyes, the too wide smile, the feet that left no prints. Knowing didn't make it any easier. Through the window, the figure stood perfectly still on the porch, waiting. The pale blue nightgown with the tiny embroidered flowers. Claire had donated that nightgown to Goodwill after the funeral. "Mom?" Jenny's voice was barely a whisper. The figure's head turned. When it smiled, its teeth were too white. Too many. "Jennifer, Claire, my daughters." The voice was warm, loving. "Wrong. Please, I'm so cold." "We buried you," Claire said. She meant it to sound strong, definitive, but it came out like a question. "Is that what you think?" The figure tilted its head further, the angle inhuman. "You scattered ashes on a bridge. But do you really think that's all I was? Paper and dust?" Ryan made a sound in his throat. "This isn't happening, isn't it?" The figure turned its attention to him. "Ryan, so nice to finally meet you. Jennifer talks about you in her prayers. She prays you'll be faithful, that you'll love her the way she loves you." A pause. "She prays in vain, doesn't she?" Ryan stepped back. "Shut up. That key in your pocket, the one you keep hidden in your wallet, it opens a place you visit on Thursdays. A little apartment on Maple Street. A woman named Rebecca lives there. Pretty girl, much younger than Jennifer." "Stop it," Jenny said. Her face had gone from white to grey. "Should I stop? Should we all pretend?" The figure spread its hands. "That's what you're good at, isn't it? Pretending. Perfect family. Perfect marriage. Perfect life." It looked at Claire. "And you. So angry. So bitter. 8 years of resentment. And you still can't say it out loud." "I don't know what you're talking about," Claire said. "Liar." The word was gentle, almost affectionate. "You hated taking care of me. Hated every moment. Every bedpan. Every pill. Every false comfort you whispered while wishing I would die faster." Claire felt tears burning her eyes. "That's not true. Isn't it? Tell me, Claire. How many nights did you pray for it to end? How many times did you hold that pillow in your hands and wonder if you had the courage?" "Stop," David said. He moved in front of Claire, putting himself between her and the window. "That's enough." The figure laughed. The sound was too high, sustained too long. "David, sweet David, you think you can protect her? You can't even protect yourself from the truth." Its black eyes fixed on him. "You knew about the will, about how much Claire was getting. You knew before she did. The lawyer called you first, asked you to break the news gently, because Jenny would be upset about getting less. But you didn't tell Claire for 2 weeks. Let her find out from a stranger. Why was that?" David's shoulders tensed. "I was trying to find the right time. You were hoping she'd never find out it was you, that she'd blame Jennifer for being upset, or the lawyer, or me. Anyone but you. The figure pressed closer to the window, its breath fogging the glass from the outside. How's that working out? Does she trust you anymore? Does she believe you when you say you love her? Get away from that window, Frank said. He'd moved to the fireplace, was pulling something from the stones, an iron poker, long and heavy. The figure ignored him. Jennifer, come here, darling. Look at me. Really look. Don't, Claire said. But Jenny was already moving, drawn forward like iron to a magnet. She reached the window and stared out at the thing wearing their mother's face. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I missed you, Jenny whispered. I should have been there. At the end. I should have come home. Yes, the figure agreed. You should have, but you were busy with your children, your husband, your perfect suburban life. Too busy to watch me die. Too busy to hold my hand. It smiled. Claire did all that. Claire was there every day, and you still resented her for getting more. Jenny's face crumpled. I didn't ask for. Didn't you? The figure's voice turned sharp. You complained to anyone who would listen. You called Claire greedy. You said she'd manipulated me, convinced me to leave her more, that she didn't really love me, just wanted my money. That's not true, Jenny turned to Claire. I never said that. I never. Didn't you? Claire asked. The words came out cold and hard. You never called me back when I asked for help. You never offered to take a shift, give me a break. You just kept saying you were busy. You had your own life. And then she died, and you complained about the will being unfair. I tried to accept it. I said it was fine. After everyone told you that you should, after everyone said Mom had her reasons, you accepted it because you had to, not because you actually thought it was fair. They were facing each other now. 8 years of buried resentment rising to the surface like bodies from a frozen lake. You resented me for having a family, Jenny said, for getting out, for having a life that wasn't just taking care of Mom. I resented you for leaving me alone with her. I had children, I had responsibilities. So did I. Claire's voice cracked. I had a marriage that fell apart because I was never home. I had a job I lost because I couldn't keep up with the hours. I had a life, Jenny, and I gave it all up while you sent cards and called once a week and pretended that was enough. The silence that followed rang like a bell. Outside, the figure clapped slowly. There it is. Finally, the truth. Frank raised the poker. Get back. The figure tilted its head at him. Or what, old man? You'll hit me with your stick. Your father couldn't stop me. Your grandfather couldn't stop me. What makes you think you can? I don't need to stop you. I just need to slow you down. He swung the poker against the window frame. Once, twice. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The figure flinched, stepping back from the glass. Iron, it hissed. Crude. Predictable. Works, doesn't it? The figure smiled again, but its eyes stayed black and hateful. For now, but you can't hide in there forever. And when you come out, when you have to eat, to sleep, to use the privy. It looked at each of them in turn. I'll be waiting. We have all night. It's Christmas Eve. Time for family. It stepped off the porch, walking away from the lodge into the darkness of the parking lot. Through the window, they could see another Christmas tree had appeared outside, fully decorated, lights glowing in the snow. The figure moved toward it slowly, deliberately. It reached out one pale hand and touched a branch. An ornament fell, shattering in the snow with a sound like breaking teeth that somehow carried clearly through the winter air. The figure looked back at them, distant now, but still visible in the darkness. You have gifts to open. The voice was softer, muffled by the wind and distance, but still perfectly audible. Don't be rude. Then it walked away, its feet leaving no prints, its nightgown rippling in a wind that wasn't there. It crossed the parking lot and disappeared into the darkness between the units. Gone. Jenny collapsed. Ryan caught her, lowered her into a chair. She was sobbing, her whole body shaking. Claire stood frozen, her hands clenched into fists. Everything the figure had said was true, every word. And now it was out there, hanging in the air between them. David reached for her, but she pulled away. Don't. Claire, you knew about the will, about Jenny being upset. You knew, and you didn't tell me. His face twisted. I was trying to protect you. By lying to me? By waiting for the right time. There was no right time. Her voice was raw. You let me find out from a stranger because you were too much of a coward to tell me yourself. That's not fair. None of this is fair. She gestured wildly at the window, at the darkness outside. None of this is fair and none of this is okay, and I'm done pretending it is. Frank moved between them. Stop, both of you. This is what it wants. You fighting, you hurting each other, that's how it feeds. Then let it feed, Claire said. I'm done lying. Lying and truth aren't the same thing. Frank's voice was hard. You can speak truth without cruelty, without tearing each other apart. She tore me apart first. Claire looked at Jenny. You left me alone with her, and then you resented me for what I earned. Jenny looked up through her tears. I didn't mean to. I didn't know she was going to. Going to what? Leave me more? Recognize what I'd actually done? Claire laughed, but it sounded like crying. You complained to everyone, made me feel guilty for getting what I'd sacrificed for. You just couldn't stand that Mom saw the truth. That's not true. Then why did you resent it? Why did you complain to everyone about the will being unfair? Why did you make me feel guilty for getting what I earned? Jenny had no answer. She looked at her hands, at Ryan holding her shoulders, at anything but her sister's face. Because you thought you deserved more, Claire said softly. You always thought you deserved more. The favorite daughter, the good one, the one who got away. And when Mom recognized what I'd actually done, what I'd actually sacrificed, you couldn't stand it. And you thought you deserved it all because you stayed, Jenny shot back. Because you sacrificed. Because you're such a martyr. The words hit like a slap. Claire stepped back. Girls, Frank said, this isn't. Stay out of this, they said in unison. Frank held up his hands and backed away. Claire and Jenny stared at each other across the worn carpet, across 8 years of silence and resentment and careful politeness, all the things they'd never said, crowding into the space between them. Outside, the singing started again. Silent night. That same pure voice, circling the building, getting closer, and underneath it, softer, the sound of footsteps on the porch. Slow, deliberate. The mother figure was back, hunting. The Yuletide, Scene 9, the feast. They sat in tense silence for over an hour. Frank had barricaded the door, pushing the heavy desk against it and wedging chairs under the handle. Not that it would stop anything that could walk through snow without leaving prints, but it made them feel better. Marginally. The footsteps continued outside, circling the building in a slow, patient rhythm. Sometimes the singing would stop, and in the silence they could hear breathing. Close, right outside the walls. Then the carol would start again, a different one this time. O come all ye faithful. Hark the herald angels sing. The first Noel, all of them beautiful, all of them wrong. Jenny sat curled in a chair by the fire, her arms wrapped around herself. Ryan stood behind her, his hand on her shoulder, but she wouldn't look at him. Every time his fingers twitched, she flinched. Claire and David stayed on opposite sides of the room. He'd tried to talk to her twice, and both times she'd turned away. The betrayal sat in her chest like a stone, heavy and cold. David checked his watch. Almost 8. We should try to sleep, Frank said. He was sitting near the door, the iron poker across his lap. Take shifts. 2 awake, 2 resting. I'm not sleeping, Jenny said. Her voice was hoarse from crying. None of us are sleeping, Ryan added. Then we sit here and wait. Frank's face was grim. But you need to understand something. The longer you're angry, the longer you hold on to this resentment, the stronger it gets. It's feeding on you right now, on all the things you won't say to each other. We said plenty, Claire muttered. No, you threw accusations. That's not the same as truth. What's the difference? Frank looked at her. Truth is, I was hurt when you left. Accusation is, you're a selfish coward. One opens dialogue, the other closes it. Maybe it should stay closed. Before Frank could respond, a sound came from the kitchen at the back of the lodge. Metal on metal, dishes rattling, the scrape of a pan on a stove. Everyone turned. The kitchen door swung open, light spilled out, warm and yellow. And with it came smells. Rich, savory smells that made Claire's stomach clench with sudden desperate hunger. Roasting turkey, fresh bread, cinnamon and clove and brown sugar, apple pie, mashed potatoes with butter and cream, cranberry sauce, stuffing with sage and onion, Christmas dinner, a feast. Nobody move, Frank said. He stood, gripping the poker, but Ryan was already walking toward the kitchen, drawn by the smell. What is that? Don't go in there. Ryan ignored him. He pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen. There was a moment of silence, then his voice awed and confused. How did this get here? The rest of them followed. They couldn't help it. The smell was overwhelming, filling the lodge, making their mouths water and their stomachs ache. The kitchen was small and outdated, with a 6-burner gas stove and a double sink. But the counter was laden with food, platters and bowls and dishes arranged in a perfect Christmas spread. A golden brown turkey sat in the center, skin glistening with butter, steam rising from the carved breast. Bowls of mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, candied yams with marshmallows. A basket of dinner rolls, warm and soft, crystal dishes filled with cranberry sauce and gravy, 2 pies cooling on the back counter, their lattice crusts perfect, and in the center of it all, a card written in careful cursive, "Merry Christmas. Enjoy." "Nobody cooked this," David said. "There's no one here. The stove wasn't even on." "It manifested it," Frank said. "Like the decorations. Like the presents. It's trying to feed you." "Why?" Jenny asked. She was staring at the food with something like longing. "What does it get out of feeding us?" "Your acceptance, your gratitude, your willingness to take what it offers." Frank moved to the counter, picked up a serving spoon. He brought it close to his face, sniffing. "And when you take it, you give it permission to come closer, to touch you, to take you." Claire's stomach was knotting with hunger. She'd eaten nothing but a granola bar since yesterday. The turkey looked perfect, the gravy rich and brown. Her mother used to make gravy like that, thick and savory with bits of giblet in it. She took a step forward. "Claire!" Frank's voice was sharp. "Don't. I'm just looking." "No, you're not. You're considering it." She was. Heaven help her, she was. Because what did it matter anymore? They were trapped here. The thing outside knew all their secrets, all their sins. It had worn her mother's face and spoken her mother's words and told every painful truth they'd been hiding for years. What was the point of fighting it? "I'm hungry," she said. "We're all hungry." Frank set the spoon down carefully. "But this isn't food. It's bait. It looks real. That's the point." He gestured to the spread. "Everything you want, everything you've been denying yourself, all laid out, free for the taking. All you have to do is say yes." "And if we do?" Frank's expression was bleak. "Then it wins, and you don't leave here." Ryan laughed. That wrong, high sound again. "We're not leaving anyway. We're snowed in. Roads are closed. We could be here for days. What are we supposed to do? Starve, if we have to. That's insane." "Maybe, but it's also survival." Ryan reached for a roll. "Don't." Frank lunged forward, but he was too slow. Ryan's fingers closed around the bread. It was warm and soft, and his stomach growled audibly. He brought it to his nose, inhaled. The smell was incredible, yeast and butter and honey. "Ryan, put it down," Jenny said. She'd gone pale again. "It's fine, it's just bread." He tore off a piece, brought it to his lips. "Please," Jenny whispered. Ryan hesitated. The bread was inches from his mouth. His hand trembled. Then he lowered it, slowly, carefully. He set the roll back on the counter. "I can't," he said. His voice was shaking. "I want to. Heaven knows I want to, but I can't." Frank exhaled. "Good man." "I'm not a good man." Ryan looked at Jenny. "That key, the one in the box, it's real. The apartment is real. Rebecca is real." Jenny closed her eyes. "I've been seeing her for 6 months. Every Thursday when I tell you I'm working late, I'm not working. I'm with her." He was crying now, tears streaming down his face. "And the worst part is I don't even love her. I wanted something that was mine. Something that didn't feel like an obligation." The words hung in the air. Jenny stood very still, her face unreadable. "I'm sorry," Ryan said. "I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't fix it. I know it doesn't make it okay, but I'm sorry." Jenny opened her eyes. "Get out. Jenny, get out of this lodge. Go back to the unit. I don't want to look at you right now." Ryan's face crumpled, but he nodded. He turned and walked out of the kitchen, through the lodge, shoving the barricade aside. The door opened, letting in a blast of cold air, then slammed shut behind him. They watched through the window as he crossed the parking lot to Unit 5. His figure was small and hunched against the darkness. The mother figure appeared beside him. She walked next to him, matching his pace, her pale nightgown bright against the snow. She was talking to him, her lips moving, though they couldn't hear the words through the glass. Ryan stopped. He turned to look at her. "No," Claire said. "Don't talk to it." But he was already responding. His mouth moved. The figure smiled. Then she reached out and touched his arm. Ryan jerked backward like he'd been burned. He stumbled, fell into the snow. The figure bent over him, still smiling, and whispered something close to his ear. Ryan screamed. The sound carried across the parking lot, high and thin. He scrambled to his feet and ran, crashing through the drifts toward Unit 5. The figure watched him go, then turned to look at the lodge. At them, she waved, slow and deliberate. Then she walked toward the building. "Get away from the window," Frank ordered. They backed away from the window, hearts pounding. Ryan had made it inside Unit 5. The door slammed shut behind him. "He shouldn't have gone out there alone," David said. His voice was shaking. "He made his choice," Claire said coldly. "Claire, he's still a person. He's still a cheater. Still a liar." She turned on him. "Just like you." David flinched. "I was trying to help. I thought bringing you together. You thought wrong." Claire's voice was ice. "You always think you can fix things with good intentions. But some things can't be fixed, David. Some things are just broken." The silence that followed was suffocating. Frank moved toward the kitchen. "We should check on the food. See if—" "I'll do it," David said. He needed to move. Needed to do something other than stand there absorbing Claire's anger. He pushed through the swinging door into the kitchen. The feast was still there, perfect and untouched. The turkey golden and glistening, the gravy steaming in its boat. The smell was overwhelming this close, making his mouth water despite everything. David's stomach cramped with hunger. He hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Just coffee and adrenaline keeping him going. He picked up the carving knife, just to move it, just to do something with his hands. The turkey looked so real, so perfectly normal. "David, don't!" Frank's voice from the doorway. But David had already carved a slice. The knife went through like butter, and the meat fell away in a perfect piece. Steam rose from it, carrying that rich, savory smell. His hand was moving before he could think. Fork to plate, meat to mouth. He took a bite. It was delicious. Better than delicious. The best turkey he'd ever tasted, moist and perfectly seasoned, melting on his tongue. He chewed. Swallowed. "David!" Claire was in the doorway now, her face white. David smiled at her. "It's fine. It's actually really good. You should." The words died in his throat. His vision blurred. The kitchen tilted sideways. The fork clattered from his hand to the floor. "David?" Claire's voice sounded distant now, like she was calling from the end of a long tunnel. He tried to answer, but his mouth wouldn't work. His legs buckled. He fell, caught himself against the counter with nerveless hands. Then the world went black. David collapsed to the floor, eyes open but unseeing, breathing but not present. Gone. "David!" Claire dropped to her knees beside him, shaking his shoulders. "David, wake up!" He didn't respond. His eyes stared at nothing. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, but there was no one behind those eyes. No recognition. No David. What did you do to him? Claire screamed at the empty kitchen. The mother figure's voice drifted through the walls, soft and pleased. "He accepted my gift. He's mine now." Frank knelt beside David, checking his pulse, his breathing. "He's still alive, but he's not here. He's somewhere else." "Where?" Jenny had come into the kitchen, her face stricken. "Wherever it takes them, when they accept what it offers." Frank looked up at Claire. "He ate the food. That's permission. That's acceptance." "How do we get him back?" "You break its hold. You stop feeding it." Frank's face was grim. "You tell each other the truth. Real truth. Not accusations. Not anger. Truth." Claire stared down at David's empty face. Her husband. The man who'd arranged this trip, trying to heal her family. The man who'd lied to her about the will, who'd kept secrets, who'd thought good intentions could fix everything. The man she loved, despite all of it. "How long does he have?" she whispered. Frank checked his watch. "I don't know, an hour, maybe 2, but the longer he's gone, the harder it is to bring him back." "Then we get him out of here." Claire grabbed David under the arms. "Jenny, help me." Jenny took his legs. Together they lifted him, carrying him through the swinging door back into the main lodge. He was dead weight, his head lolling, limbs hanging loose. They laid him on the floor near the fireplace, as far from the kitchen as they could manage. Claire knelt beside him, holding his hand. It was warm but limp. His chest rose and fell in steady, shallow breaths, but his eyes stared at nothing. "Come back," she whispered. "Please come back." Frank moved to the window, keeping watch. Jenny stood frozen, staring at David's empty face. Then the figure appeared on the porch. They all turned at the same moment. She was there, visible through the glass, closer than before. The pale nightgown, the too still posture, the face that was their mother but wrong. She climbed the steps. Her hand rose to knock, but this time the knock was different. Harder, faster, urgent, desperate. "Let me in," the figure called. But the voice wasn't their mother's anymore. It was lower, rougher, male. "Let me in, let me in, let me in." The pounding intensified. The door shook in its frame. "It's changing," Frank said. "Losing patience, getting hungry." "What happens if it gets in?" Jenny asked, her voice barely audible. "Nothing good." The pounding stopped. For a moment, there was only silence. Then from the kitchen came a new sound. Dishes shattering, glass breaking, metal scraping against tile. Frank moved toward the kitchen doorway, iron poker raised. "Stay with David." But Claire and Jenny both ran back to the kitchen. The feast was ruined. The turkey lay on the floor, torn apart as if by animals. The bowls were overturned, mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce spreading across the linoleum. The pies had been smashed, their fillings ground into the counters. And on the wall, written in gravy, were 3 words. "Stop pretending now." "It's done playing," Frank said quietly. "It wants the truth, all of it. No more accusations, no more half measures. You need to tell each other what you really feel, why you're really angry, what you really want." Claire looked at her sister. Jenny looked back. 8 years of silence, 8 years of careful distance and polite lies. 8 years of pretending they were okay when they were anything but. "I don't know if I can," Jenny whispered. "You have to," Frank said, "or it'll kill you both and David." Outside, the footsteps started again, circling, hunting, and the singing resumed. Silent night. But this time the voice was wrong. Too deep. Too many voices layered together, harmonizing with themselves. Silent night, holy night. All is calm, all is bright. The lights in the lodge flickered. Round yon virgin, mother and child, the Christmas tree lights went out. Holy infant, so tender and mild. The fire in the hearth sputtered and died, leaving only embers. Sleep in heavenly peace. Darkness closed in around them. Sleep in heavenly peace. And in that darkness, something laughed. The Yuletide Scene 10, The Confession. The laughter echoed through the lodge, bouncing off the walls like something alive. It wasn't her mother's laugh. It was older than that. Colder. Frank fumbled for matches, struck one against the box. The small flame pushed back the darkness just enough to see each other's faces. He lit a kerosene lamp on the mantel, another on the table. The light was weak and flickering, casting long shadows across the room. David lay motionless on the floor near the fireplace where they'd carried him from the kitchen. His chest rose and fell in shallow breaths, but his eyes stared at nothing. Gone somewhere. The Yuletide had taken him. Claire knelt beside him, one hand gripping his. His pulse beat steady under her fingers, but there was no one home behind those eyes. "We're running out of time," Frank said quietly, glancing at David. "You need to tell the truth, real truth. That's the only way to break its hold and bring him back." Jenny looked at her unconscious brother-in-law, then at her sister. The weight of 8 years pressed down between them. Claire turned to her sister. Jenny was still standing near the kitchen, her face pale in the lamplight. 8 years of careful distance between them. 8 years of unspoken truths. The entity wanted those truths now. All of them. "I'll start," Claire said. Her voice came out rough. "Since apparently we're doing this." Jenny looked at her, waiting. Claire took a breath. The words felt like broken glass in her throat, but she forced them out anyway. "I hate you." Jenny flinched, but Claire kept going. "I've hated you for years. You got to be normal. You got to have a childhood. You got to grow up without him touching you in the dark, without him coming into your room at night, without him telling you it was special, that this was how fathers showed love." Her voice cracked. "And I protected you from that. I kept him away from you. I made sure he came to my room instead, and you never even knew." The silence that followed was suffocating. David stood frozen by the window. Frank watched from his position near the door, his expression unreadable. Jenny's voice was barely a whisper. "Claire? Don't. I'm not finished." Claire's hands were fists at her sides. "And then Mom got sick, and you visited twice a month. Twice. You drive up from Columbus, stay for an hour, complain about the traffic, and leave. While I was there every single day, changing her sheets, giving her medication, watching her waste away, watching her die. Tears streamed down Claire's face now, hot and angry. And then Mom got sick, and you visited twice a month and complained about traffic while I was there every single day watching her die. And the fact that she left you anything in the will, 30%, or whatever, made me want to scream. You didn't earn it. You didn't suffer for it. You just showed up whenever and got paid anyway. She stepped toward Jenny, her voice rising. You got to be happy. You got Ryan and kids and a nice house and a normal life, and I got rage and resentment and nightmares about our father. I wake up at 3 a.m. and I can still feel his hands on me. I can still smell his cologne, and I hate you for getting to be okay when I'm not. The words hung in the air. Outside, the singing had stopped. The footsteps had stopped. Everything was listening. Jenny was crying now, silent tears tracking down her cheeks. Are you done? Claire wanted to say yes. She wanted to be done. But there was more. There was always more. I thought David could fix me, she said quietly. I thought if I married a good man, if I built a normal life, the nightmares would stop. But they didn't. And every time I see you with your perfect family, I think about how I'll never have that, because I'm too broken. Because Dad broke me and Mom let him and you just got to walk away clean. Her voice broke on the last word. She was sobbing now, ugly and raw. David moved to comfort her, but she held up a hand, stopping him. I'm sorry, she said to Jenny. I'm sorry for resenting you. I'm sorry for hating you. You didn't deserve it. You were just a kid. We both were. But I'm so angry and I don't know how to stop being angry, and I'm afraid if I let it go there'll be nothing left of me. The confession echoed in the silence. Claire felt hollowed out, scraped clean. Then Jenny spoke. You think I didn't know? Claire looked up, startled. Jenny's voice was steady now, though tears still fell. I knew, Claire. Maybe not the details. Maybe I didn't want to know the details. But I knew Dad was wrong. I knew he hurt you. I heard him walking past my room some nights, heard him go into yours, and I would pull my blanket over my head and pretend I didn't hear it. She took a shaking breath. I knew you kept him away from me, and I never said anything. I just let you carry it alone because it was easier. Because if I acknowledged it, I'd have to feel guilty. And I didn't want to feel guilty. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to pretend we were a normal family. Jenny crossed the room, stood facing her sister. They were the same height. They had the same eyes. And Mom, you're right. I should have been there more. I knew you were drowning, but I told myself you were stronger than me, that you could handle it. The truth was I just didn't want to watch her die. I didn't want to see what she'd become, so I let you do it alone. Her voice dropped to a whisper. The will wasn't fair. Of course it wasn't fair. It should have gone all to you. Every penny. You earned it taking care of her. I just showed up and pretended to care. Jenny's composure cracked. I am selfish. I've always been selfish. I took your sacrifice and I built a nice life on top of it, and I never thanked you. Because thanking you would mean admitting what you saved me from, and I couldn't do that. I couldn't look at it. She was crying harder now. I wasn't there because I was afraid. I was afraid if I got too close I'd see myself in Mom. Passive. Weak. Letting bad things happen. And I was afraid if I acknowledged what you did for me, I'd have to acknowledge how much I owe you. And I don't know how to pay that back. I don't know how to be the sister you deserved. The words came faster now, desperate. But I want to try. If you'll let me. I want to be better. I want to be someone you don't have to resent. The air in the lodge felt different, lighter somehow. The oppressive weight that had been pressing down on them all night was lifting. Outside, something screamed, high and furious and desperate. The mother figure appeared at the window, pressing her hands against the glass. Her face was distorted now, features sliding like melted wax. Her mouth opened too wide, revealing darkness inside. No, the thing hissed. No, no, no. You're supposed to hate each other. You're supposed to tear each other apart. But the sisters weren't looking at it. They were looking at each other. I forgive you, Claire said. The words came easier than she expected. I forgive you for not being there, for being selfish, for getting the normal life I never got. I forgive you because holding on to it is killing me, and I don't want to die angry. Jenny's breath caught. Claire. And I'm sorry too. I'm sorry for resenting you, for judging you, for treating you like you weren't allowed to be happy just because I wasn't. You deserved better than that." Jenny stepped forward, hesitated, then wrapped her arms around her sister. Claire stiffened, then melted into the embrace. They held each other tight, really held each other for the first time in 8 years. Not the polite hugs at holidays, not the careful distance. This was real. This was bone deep and desperate and necessary. "Thank you," Jenny whispered against Claire's shoulder, "for protecting me, for saving me from him, for being strong when I was weak." "I love you," Claire said. The words felt strange in her mouth. Vulnerable, true. "I love you too. I always have, even when I was avoiding you." The thing at the window shrieked again. The glass cracked under its hands, the door rattled in its frame. But Frank was already moving. He raised the iron poker, spoke words in a language Claire didn't recognize. Old words, binding words. The figure froze, its distorted face twisted in rage and pain. "You broke its hold," Frank said. "It feeds on resentment, on the gap between what you show and what you feel. But you just closed that gap." The decorations around the lodge flickered and vanished. The Christmas tree dissolved like smoke. The presents disappeared. The stockings, the garland, the tinsel, all of it gone in an instant. The figure at the window began to dissolve too. Its form grew transparent, then translucent. Its scream faded to a whisper, then silence. Then it was gone. The lodge was just a lodge again. Plain wood paneling, worn furniture, kerosene lamps casting normal shadows. David gasped. They all turned, his eyes focused, pupils contracting. He blinked, confused, looking around like he'd just woken from a nightmare. "Claire?" His voice was hoarse. She dropped to her knees beside him, gripping his shoulders. "You're back. You're okay." What happened?" He sat up slowly, Frank helping support him. "You ate the food," Frank said. "It took you, but they brought you back." David looked between Claire and Jenny, seeing their tear-streaked faces, their exhausted expressions. "Is it over?" "For now," Frank said. He set down the poker. "It'll come back someday. The Yuletide always does. But not for you. You broke free." Claire still held her sister. She could feel Jenny's heartbeat against her chest, rapid and strong. Outside, the wind was dying down. The snow had stopped falling. It was Christmas Eve, almost midnight. "We should check on Ryan," Jenny said quietly. She pulled back, wiping her eyes. "I'll go," David offered. "No." Jenny straightened her shoulders. "I need to. This is my mess too." Claire watched her sister walk to the door, open it. The cold air rushed in, but it didn't feel malevolent anymore. Just cold. Jenny crossed the parking lot to Unit 5, her footsteps crunching in the fresh snow. She knocked. After a moment, Ryan opened the door. He looked pale and shaken, but alive. They spoke. Claire couldn't hear the words, but she could see Jenny's posture. Firm, clear. Whatever she was saying, she meant it. After a few minutes, Jenny turned and walked back to the lodge. Alone. "He'll sleep in the unit tonight," she said when she came back inside. "We'll figure out the rest later. But right now," she looked at Claire, "right now I just want to be with my sister." Claire smiled. It felt strange on her face. Real. "Yeah," she said. "I'd like that too." They sat together by the fireplace. Frank rebuilt the fire, proper flames this time that gave real warmth. David found blankets. They wrapped themselves up and sat in companionable silence, watching the embers glow. Outside, Christmas Eve turned to Christmas morning. Inside, two sisters began the slow work of healing. The Yuletide Scene 11, Christmas morning, Rockbridge. Claire woke to sunlight. Real sunlight, not the pale, sickly light that had filtered through the storm. This was bright and clear, streaming through the lodge windows and warming her face. She was still in the chair by the fireplace, a wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Jenny was curled up in the chair beside her, also asleep. At some point during the night, they'd moved closer together, their hands clasped between them. David was asleep on the couch across the room. Frank sat in his chair by the door, awake, the iron poker still within reach. He nodded at Claire when she stirred. "Morning," he said quietly. "Storm's past." Claire stood carefully, trying not to wake Jenny. Her body ached from sleeping in the chair, but it was a good ache. Clean. Like she'd run a marathon and survived. She walked to the window and looked out. The world was transformed. Snow blanketed everything in a thick, pristine layer. The parking lot was buried. The units were half covered, their doors barely visible. But the sky was crystal blue, cloudless and brilliant. Icicles hung from the eaves, catching the morning light and throwing it back in rainbow fractals. It was beautiful. "What time is it?" she asked. Frank checked his watch. "Just past 8. Plows came through the main roads around 6. Heard them from here. Old Mill Road won't be clear yet, but it'd be passable if you're careful." Claire turned to look at him. "Thank you. For last night. For helping us." "Just doing my job." Frank stood, stretched. "Coffee's on, non-coffee this time. Not manifestation coffee." Claire smiled. "I'll take some." They moved to the kitchen. The destruction from last night was gone. The floor was clean, the counters bare. No feast, no smashed pies, no words written in gravy. Just a normal, slightly shabby lodge kitchen. Frank poured coffee into 2 mugs. "You planning to finish what you started?" "The ashes?" "Still sitting at Rockbridge, far as I know, unless the creek took them." Claire thought about it. They'd come here for a purpose. To scatter their mother's ashes, to say goodbye, to close that chapter of their lives. And instead, they'd opened a different one entirely. But maybe both things could be true. Maybe you could close one door and open another at the same time. "Yeah," she said. "We should finish it." By 9 o'clock, they were assessing the damage. The storm had dumped at least 4 feet of snow across the parking lot, and both cars were buried to their windows. Jenny had woken, and David, and they'd all had coffee and the granola bars that were actually in their bags. Ryan emerged from Unit 5, looking haggard but intact. He and Jenny spoke briefly, privately. Claire didn't hear what was said, but when they finished, Jenny came back alone. Frank appeared from the main office with 2 shovels and a scraper. "Main roads are clear," he said. "Plows came through around 6, but Old Mill Road won't be touched until Monday at the earliest." "We can get there on foot if we have to," Claire said. "You could," Frank agreed, "but it's 7 miles round trip through snow that deep. Better to dig out and drive as far as you can, then walk the rest if needed." So they dug. David insisted on helping despite his pallor and the way his hands shook. Ryan worked in silence, shoulders tight with unexpressed anger. Jenny and Claire took turns with the second shovel, their rhythm settling into something almost cooperative. Frank moved between the cars, scraping windshields, checking exhaust pipes. It took 3 hours. By 12:30, both vehicles were clear enough to move. The parking lot was a maze of chest-high snow walls and narrow channels. David's car started on the second try. Ryan's took 4 attempts, the engine coughing and wheezing in the cold. Jenny walked over to Ryan's car. Claire watched them talk through the windshield, brief, tense. When Jenny came back, her face was set. "He's driving back separately," she said. "Why?" Jenny's jaw tightened. "Because after what came out last night, I need time to figure out what I'm going to do about it. About him. About all of it." Claire stared at her. "Jenny, Don't." Jenny held up a hand. "I don't want sympathy right now. I just want to finish what we came here to do." She buckled her seatbelt, watching Ryan's car pull out of the parking lot ahead of them. He didn't look back. "Either way," Jenny said quietly, "that's something I have to figure out later. Today is about Mom and us." Frank walked over to David's car. Claire rolled her window down. "Old Mill Road's going to be rough," Frank warned. "Stay in the tire tracks if you can see them. Turn back if it gets too deep." "We'll manage," Claire said. Old Mill Road was treacherous in daylight after the storm. The snow was deep and the pavement slick beneath it, but David drove carefully, taking the curves slow. In the passenger seat, Claire watched the trees slide past. They looked different now. Just trees. Just winter woods. The hollow wasn't watching anymore. Jenny sat in the back seat, quiet. Not the tense silence of the drive up, but something calmer, settled. "You doing okay?" Claire asked, turning to look at her. Jenny met her eyes. "Yeah, I think I am. You?" "Better than I've been in a long time." They found Rockbridge exactly where they'd left it. The road dropped down to where it crossed the creek at water level. Pavement laid directly over the natural rock crossing. Snow clung to the exposed stones along the banks, and dark water moved sluggishly beneath. Claire climbed out of the car, Jenny following. David stayed back, giving them space. The cold air bit at Claire's face, sharp and clean. She could hear the water running beneath the ice, patient and eternal. She picked up the urn, brushed off the snow. It was lighter than she remembered. Just ash and bone and memory. "Should we say something?" Jenny asked. Claire considered. There was so much that could be said. About their mother's failures, her passivity, her complicity in their pain. About the ways she'd hurt them and the ways she'd tried, in her limited way, to love them. But standing here in the cold afternoon light, with the water rushing below and the sun warm on her shoulders, Claire found she didn't want to catalogue grievances. She didn't want to perform forgiveness she didn't feel or manufacture sentiment that wasn't real. She just wanted to let go. Mom wasn't perfect, she said finally. She failed us, in big ways and small ways. She saw things happening that she should have stopped, and she didn't. She chose comfort over protection. She was weak when we needed her to be strong. Jenny nodded, tears in her eyes. But she tried, Claire continued, in her own way, and I think she loved us. Maybe not well, maybe not enough, but she did love us. She wanted us to be okay, Jenny added. That's why she wanted us to scatter the ashes together. She wanted us to be together. Yeah, Claire looked at her sister. She would have been happy, last night, not about the entity or the terror or any of that, but about us, finally talking, finally being real with each other. Jenny smiled through her tears. She would have been relieved. She always hated conflict. She would have made us hug and apologize and pretend everything was fine. And we would have done it, because it was easier. They both laughed. It felt good, natural. Claire opened the urn. Together, she and Jenny held it, tilting it slowly over the creek. The ashes fell, some catching on the ice, some drifting through the cracks to the water below. Grey and white against the pristine snow, they poured until the urn was empty. The last of Eleanor Brennan released to the winter and the water and the waiting earth. Claire set the empty urn down on the rocks. For a moment she just stood there, breathing the cold air, listening to the creek, feeling lighter than she had in years. What happens now? Jenny asked. I don't know. Claire turned to her. We try, I guess. Figure out what being sisters looks like when we're being honest. I'd like that. Jenny hesitated, then said, Would you come to dinner next week? You and David? The kids would love to see you. And I'd like you to be part of their lives. Really part of it, not just Christmas cards and birthday calls. Claire felt something warm unfold in her chest. Hope, maybe. Or just possibility. Yeah, she said. I'd like that too. They stood together at the creek for a few more minutes. The sun climbed higher, melting the snow on the trees, sending small avalanches sliding from the branches. A crow called from somewhere in the woods, harsh and clear. Goodbye, Mom, Jenny said quietly. Claire echoed her. Goodbye. They turned and walked back to the car. David had the engine running, the heater going. When they climbed in, he looked at them both and smiled. All done? All done, Claire confirmed. As they drove away, Claire looked back at Rockbridge. For just a moment, she thought she saw a figure standing there. Pale nightgown, grey hair, watching them go. But when she blinked, it was gone. Just snow and stone and water. Maybe it had been there. Maybe it hadn't. Maybe the Yuletide was gone. Or maybe it was just waiting for the next lost souls who came bearing their unspoken resentments to the hollow. Either way, it wasn't Claire's problem anymore. They stopped at Ironwood Retreat to collect their things. Frank was waiting on the porch, bundled in his heavy coat. He helped them load their bags, refused David's offer of money for the rooms. You folks did good work last night, he said. Facing what you faced, that takes courage. I don't feel courageous, Claire admitted. Courage isn't not being scared. It's being scared and doing the thing anyway. Frank pulled something from his pocket. Business cards, plain white with simple black text. Harold McKinnon. He's in Willow's Bend, about 7 miles from here. If you ever need help again, real help, the kind most people don't believe in. Claire took the card, turned it over in her hands. The name was familiar somehow, though she couldn't place it. She tucked it into her wallet. Thank you, Frank. Take care of each other, he said. That's what family does. The drive back to Columbus took an hour and a half. The highways were mostly clear, the sun bright. Christmas music played on the radio, familiar carols that no longer made Claire's skin crawl. Jenny dozed in the back seat. David hummed along with Jingle Bells. They dropped Jenny at her house. Claire noticed Ryan's car wasn't in the driveway. Her kids came running out when they saw the car, throwing themselves at their mother with shouts and hugs. Jenny caught them up, spun them around, buried her face in their hair. Over their heads, she met Claire's eyes. Mouthed, Next week? Claire nodded. Next week. Then she and David drove to their own house. Quiet little ranch in a quiet suburb. Nothing fancy, nothing special. But when Claire walked through the door and smelled their own familiar smell, coffee and laundry detergent and David's cologne, she felt herself relax in a way she hadn't in years. Home. This was home. That night, after they'd unpacked and showered and eaten leftover Chinese food from the fridge, Claire lay in bed beside her husband. David was already asleep, his breathing deep and even. But Claire stayed awake a little longer, watching the streetlight shadows on the ceiling. She thought about Ironwood Retreat, about the Yuletide and the mother figure and the terror of that long night, about the truth she'd spoken and the truth Jenny had spoken, and the way those words had broken the entity's hold. She thought about her mother, about Eleanor Brennan, who had been weak and passive and complicit, but also human and flawed and doing her best with the tools she had. She thought about her sister, about 8 years of distance and all the ways they'd hurt each other and all the ways they might heal. The rage was still there. She could feel it, banked like coals in her chest. Maybe it would always be there. Maybe you didn't get rid of anger that deep, that justified. Maybe you just learned to live with it. To choose forgiveness, not because the anger went away, but because carrying it was too heavy. But for the first time in longer than she could remember, Claire felt something else alongside the rage. Hope. Small and fragile and new, but real. She closed her eyes and let herself drift towards sleep. Tomorrow was December 26th, the day after Christmas. The world would keep turning. She and Jenny would figure out how to be sisters again. She and David would keep building their life together. The Hollow would keep its vigil, and Frank would keep his watch. And somewhere in Willow's Bend, a man named Harold McKinnon would be ready if anyone needed him. But for tonight, Claire was just here. In her own bed, in her own home. Safe and whole, and finally, beginning to heal. Outside, the winter night settled in. Stars appeared between the clouds, Christmas lights still glowed on the neighbors' houses, red and green and white. And somewhere in Grindstone Hollow, Ironwood Retreat sat quiet and dark, waiting for the next lost souls who would need its particular kind of reckoning. But that was a story for another Christmas, another time, another telling. Epilogue. New Year's Eve, 1986. Claire stood at Jenny's kitchen window, watching snow fall on the suburban street below. Not the blizzard kind of snow that had trapped them at Ironwood Retreat. Just the gentle, normal kind that made everything look clean and soft, like the world starting over. Behind her, the house was full of noise, good noise. Her niece and nephew were playing some complicated game involving Legos and action figures. David and Jenny's husband Tom, the one she'd married the previous summer, were arguing about football scores in the living room. Someone had the television on, volume low, counting down to midnight. Tom was better, quieter. He listened when Jenny talked, and Claire had been there for the wedding. Small and simple in a judge's office, and she'd hugged her sister and meant it. Small steps. That's what the therapist she'd started seeing in January of '84 had said. You don't undo 8 years of distance overnight. You don't heal childhood trauma with one conversation. But you take small steps, and then more small steps, and eventually you look back and realize you've walked a long way. Claire? Jenny came up beside her, drying her hands on a dish towel. They'd just finished washing up from dinner. You okay? Yeah. Claire turned from the window, just thinking. About Mom? A little. About that night. About everything that happened. Jenny was quiet for a moment. They'd talked about that night at Ironwood several times over the years. Between themselves, with David. Working through the layers of it. What they'd seen, yes, but more importantly, everything it had forced them to face. Everything they'd needed to face for years. The therapy, individual sessions for both of them, focused on the rest. Their childhood, their father, their mother's passivity, the resentment that had built up like scar tissue. Neither of them ever mentioned the pale figure in the nightgown or the impossible feast. Some things you couldn't explain to a therapist without risking a psych evaluation. I was thinking about what Frank said, Claire said quietly, about how it fed on the gap between performance and reality, how we gave it power by pretending. Jenny folded the dish towel carefully. We're not pretending anymore. No, Claire agreed. We're not. The kids ran through the kitchen, a blur of energy and laughter. Tom called something from the living room. David responded, laughing. Normal sounds. Family sounds. Claire thought about that first dinner, the week after Christmas. How awkward it had been, how careful. The kids staring at her like she was a stranger, which she supposed she was. Years of distance don't disappear because you want them to. But she'd came back the next week. And the week after that. And slowly, carefully, they'd started building something real. Not perfect. Not without friction or old habits that flared up sometimes. But real. I'm glad you're here, Jenny said softly. I'm glad we're doing this. Me too. They stood together at the window, watching the snow. Claire thought about their mother, scattered at Rock Bridge, about the hollow and the entity that waited there, about Frank Harmon keeping his lonely vigil, about Harold McKinnon's card, still in her wallet, a reminder that there were things in the world that couldn't be explained or rationalized. But mostly, she thought about her sister, about the truth they'd spoken to each other and the forgiveness they'd found, about how healing wasn't a destination but a process, ongoing and imperfect, and absolutely necessary. Almost midnight, Jenny said, checking the clock on the wall. We should get back to the living room. They rejoined the others. The kids had been promised they could stay up to watch the ball drop, and they were getting punchy with tiredness, bouncing off the furniture. David patted the couch beside him, and Claire sat, his arms settling around her shoulders. Tom opened bottles of sparkling cider. Jenny poured it into glasses, let the kids have their own. They made faces at the bubbles, which made the adults laugh. On the television, the countdown began. 10, 9, 8. Claire looked around the room, at her sister and her sister's new family. At her husband, solid and patient and good. At the life they were all trying to build together, complicated and messy and worth it. 7, 6, 5. She thought about Ironwood Retreat one more time. About sitting in that lodge in the darkness, with an entity circling outside and years of resentment poisoning the air inside. About the moment when she'd finally said the truth out loud. When Jenny had said it back. When they'd chosen forgiveness over rage. 4, 3, 2. The entity had wanted them to tear each other apart. Instead, they'd held each other together. 1. Happy New Year, everyone shouted. The kids blew party horns. Tom kissed Jenny. David kissed Claire. The television showed crowds in Times Square, confetti falling, strangers embracing. Happy New Year, Claire, Jenny said, raising her glass. Claire raised hers in return. Happy New Year. Outside, the snow continued falling. Inside, the family continued living, imperfect and real and healing. And somewhere in Grindstone Hollow, over an hour away, Ironwood Retreat sat quiet and dark. Waiting, watching. The Yuletide would come again, it always did. When the next family arrived, carrying their unspoken resentments and their careful lies. When the next Christmas brought people together who'd forgotten how to be real with each other. It would wake, it would hunt, it would feed, but not tonight. Tonight, two sisters who'd found their way back to each other sat in a warm home, surrounded by people they loved, choosing truth over performance and forgiveness over rage. And that was enough. That was everything. The new year stretched ahead, full of possibility and challenge and the slow, necessary work of healing. But they would face it together, as sisters, as family. Real family, honest family, the only kind worth having. Jenny refilled their glasses. To new beginnings, Claire clinked her glass against her sister's. To new beginnings. They drank, they laughed, they lived. And in the hollow the entity slept. For now.